So in the previous videos, we've got Python, we've learned how to use the command prompt. Similar things we can do in the terminal if you're using a Mac or a Linux machine. We've got the text editor. We've started to write some very simple programs, but still, quite sophisticated because we're asking a program to do what we're telling it to do. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool stuff. We've learned how to do multiple line code comments here, single line comments. We know that they could be anywhere. We've made some print statements. We've also made some errors. We've learned how to start to interact with the errors. Let's start doing some more programmy type things. One of the things that we will do for the program that we want to write is to assign variables. So variables basically say, okay, dear computer, I want you to make a little bit of the memory on your hard drive or your RAM spare, free, and I want you to call this little pocket or data, region, address, I want you to call it A. If we call it A, so A equals, so this way we're saying to Python, I want you to make a little bit of the memory available, and I want you to call it A. And what we're going to do is we're going to then get Python to store the value 2 in A. We can do this any number of times. B equals 3, C equals 45. So now we've got 3 different parts of the memory. Now Python, we don't need to tell the computer exactly where we want it. Python does that for us. In other programming languages, we would have to actually go into the registers or go into the memory addresses and say, I want it exactly there. We don't need to do that. That's why Python is quite easy to learn. It does it automatically for us. We can let it do it automatically for us. So here we've got 3 variables, variable A, variable B, variable C, and I've just given it just some random numbers, 2, 3, and 45. So we'll say here, this is a variable called A and is the number 2. Let's see, can we print this variable out? Let's print now B there. What do we see? I want you to get into the habit of trying, just giving it a shot. So demo 1, so we've got the number 2, then a space, and then the number 3. So these aren't printed to the screen, to the command, because we haven't asked Python to print it. We've just got it into our Python file. Only when we make a direct call to print will it print it out. There's some other times where it will print automatically out as well. So we've asked it to print A. A is the variable, and we've made that the number 2. So the number 2 is there. Good. Right, that's done it. What else have we printed? We've printed B. B is 3, and it's printed out the number 3. So it's done what we've asked it to do. So let's have a look here. We've put the number 2 in there. So can we get an idea of what type of data we've stored in A? If we ask Python to print the type of A, let's see what we get. It says, okay, it's not printed out just the variable anymore. We've asked it to do a little bit more. It actually says, okay, A is of the class of variable called int, which is short for integer. It's a whole number. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 25, 35, minus 6, minus 8, minus 20. If it's a whole number, it's an integer. And so we can probe Python to say, what type of information is A? In this case, it's an integer, and it's called an int. Well, can we store variables that aren't integers. So what other sorts of information or data can we store? Well, we were printing out strings of characters before, weren't we? So we'll print out hello world. We've put this in quotations. So this is a signal that we want it to be a string, and I think this will be class string. So we'll print type B. What do we get? Class string. So we've got a second type of data here. Strings, so words, one way you could think of it. If it's in quotation mark, then it's a string. What if we were to have 3.14159? So what type of data or variable is C? Have a think. Right, let's see what it gets. It's a float, which means it's a floating point number. We've got a decimal point, so therefore the computer, when it encodes this in the memory, has to take into account the decimal and also the complexity and how much data it needs. It's things like precision, but we've got integers, whole numbers, we've got strings, so strings are words or characters, multiple characters inside the quotation marks, and we've also got floats, floating point numbers. So one way that I think of it, it's probably incorrect, but it's not too bad, I think, is if it's got a decimal point, it's probably a float. Definitely not a whole number if it's got a decimal point. Well, let's see. D equals 7.0. So here, do we have a whole number or do we have a float? It's still a float because we've still asked Python to encode that variable with the decimal point. So it's a little bit more special than just an integer. So we've got different types of variables here. So string is even just a single character almost. Okay, so that's different types of variables, and we can only do certain operations on certain combinations or certain types of variables. And we'll get into that as we start to build this program by Yilmaz and Meister, where we try to make the visual stimuli. I'll leave it there.